Nicholas and Capital Link, distinguished panelists. My name is Stian Sollied. I'm the country manager for DNV here in Japan, and I have the great honor and privilege to try to lead this, which should be a very engaging discussion on the pathway to green shipping. Before I start the introduction of the panelists, I just want to try to set the scene a bit for the forthcoming discussion. So if you just give me a couple of minutes, I just want to summarize what we see as the present status. I think we can all agree that this decade, the 2020s, will be a critical decade of setting our industry decisively on the course to net zero. We're seeing now the recent years that the shipping's decarbonization is slowly gaining some speed, and that is also clear from our latest Maritime forecast report that is in this year in its 7th edition. What we see is that there is definitely promising rising orders for ships to run on lower carbon fuels, but as you all know, there are very few existing vessels in the present fleet that is doing so. So at MEPC 80 earlier this year, the governments of the world seemed to recognize and acknowledge that, which then led to IMO's revised greenhouse gas strategy, driving accelerated net zero ambitions. And moreover, we also see that ship emissions are now getting direct pricing of their emissions through emission trading scheme by EU, which was also mentioned in the panel earlier today, from 2024. And from my point of view, this is probably only the beginning of the start of various schemes where we'll see that emissions will have a direct price. We also see that non-regulatory stakeholders, such as cargo owners, charterers, financing institutions, are playing increasingly an important role in driving this development. In response to growing environmental public concerns, these stakeholders are increasingly putting their investments in more eco-friendly shipping, supported by different schemes such as Poseidon Principles and also Sea Cargo Charter. On the technology side, we see that the fuel technology transition has already started in our industry. And so far this year, we see that half of the ordered tonnage can run either on LNG, LPG, and the new kid on the block, methanol. And that's compared with 1/3 of that tonnage last year. So while the fuel technology transition is gathering pace, the search for different kinds of solutions is definitely continuing. And we know that technology to reduce both energy consumption and to reduce the need for expensive carbon-neutral fuel will be important. New and novel technology, such as wind-assisted propulsion, liquefied hydrogen, air lubrication systems, also onboard carbon capture that was mentioned earlier, and maybe a bit controversial, nuclear propulsion, is definitely being investigated. But most importantly, we see that collaboration is definitely what is needed to ensure that the future fuel supply, the infrastructure, and the investment decisions are made appropriate. Decarbonization of shipping will definitely come with a lot of cost. There is no doubt about that. And these are costs that cannot be absorbed by one single stakeholder. They need to be absorbed by the whole value chain. So that means that new contractual arrangements will be needed in order to have these costs allocated all the way to reaching the end consumer. And with this as a small backdrop for our discussion today, I'm looking forward to a very engaged and interesting discussion with our panelists. So let me just, before we start, introduce you quite quickly. We start from my left here. It's Mr. Tsentides, which has been with Ifchor for more than 15 years, but he has also over 30 years of work experience with an extensive shipping industry background, having served in various senior executive roles. Trifon created and now leads Ifchor Galbraiths Sustainability Desk, which supports its global shipping clients to be at the forefront of the maritime industry's decarbonization revolution. delivering commercially viable strategies for them to seeking to minimize their operational and environmental impact and transit towards a zero carbon future. Next to him, we have Akamatsu-san from Itochu Corporation. He joined the Marine Department of Itochu back in 1992 and worked initially mainly on new building projects for clients in Asia and in Europe. He was London representative from 2005 to 2010, and in 2019 he was assigned as Deputy General Manager of the Marine Department, responsible for creating new business areas related to decarbonization. He has been driving the development of the ammonia fuel ship with associated supply chain. And last year, Akamatsu-san was assigned as General Manager of Itochu's Green Innovation Business Unit. Next to him again, you have a familiar face. He's already been introduced earlier today. He was at the fleet optimization panel. But thank you very much, Ikeda-san, for also joining this panel later today. You're a busy man today, for sure. I will not repeat the full introduction of Ikeda-san. I will just again mention that this year he became an executive officer for K-Line, so congratulations for that. He is responsible for the greenhouse gas reduction strategy and also shipbuilding in K-Line, and he's been with K-Line for, I think, more than 30 years.
Okay, thank you, Stian. I'm back.
Thank you. And next to him, I think we have Kashima-san, if I'm not mistaken. Kashima-san has been with NYK for a substantial amount of time, all the way back to the 80s, close to 40 years, I believe, now. He has been a corporate officer in NYK since 2018 and was also this year appointed Senior Managing Executive Officer in NYK. Congratulations for that, Kashima-san. And he is also Chief Executive of NYK Technical Headquarters. And then all the way to the end here, our fifth panelist is Mr. Jeffrey Chan. He is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Purus with over 2 decades of asset management experience. He played an essential role in shaping Purus' sustainability strategy from the very beginning, I heard. Prior to joining Purus, he served as a Senior Managing Director in Entrust Global, where he was a key member of the Global Investment Committee and managed investments and client portfolios. So, as you can see, we have a quite diverse and should be very interesting panel here today. 5 of them up on stage, making it maybe a bit tight around the table, but I hope you can manage. So, pathway to green shipping. I will try to kick it off with at least a simply framed question, but maybe a bit more complex to answer. And that is basically from the panelists' point of view. What is, from your perspective, today driving the green transition in the maritime industry? And also, if you can point to parts of the industry or stakeholders that is also lagging behind. So I think we'll start all the way up to the left here with Jeffrey, if you can kick off the discussion.
Sure, thank you, and thank you for Capital Link for having me, and very happy to be participating on this panel, so thank you for that. It's a really broad question, and I think that there's obviously many different stakeholders that are really driving it. With Purus, we really started with the objective of really enabling the clean energy transition, and that's really by providing low carbon vessels to our wind and our gas customers, really global energy majors. So for us, quite frankly, it started with us. It was really looking at an opportunity both from a human perspective as well as from a business perspective of really helping to catalyze that change. This is obviously something very important for us. We are a company that has the majority of our operations based in Europe and as well as in Asia and Singapore. So we're really kind of spanning two different continents here, and we're really seeing differences in what's kind of driving sustainability and change. I'm actually based in the U.S., and you really have different clock speeds of whether it's your customers, whether it's consumers like you and I, whether it's governments, and you really have a lot of kind of contradictory forces kind of at play here. So it's really, I think, important to figure out how to navigate that. I'll give you a good example just from my backyard. You have the United States passing the very poorly named Inflation Reduction Act, which provides a lot of subsidies for alternative fuels and looking to really promote decarbonization. But at the same time, when you're looking at offshore wind, there's been a lot of pushback recently from the various states. You actually have a lot of states passing anti-ESG legislation, specifically because they're arguing that it is detrimental to the fossil fuel industry. And as I think everybody in the room knows, the United States is a big, ultimately exporter of energy. A lot of that's fossil-based. So very different environment in Europe, where you have to see the government and a lot of companies being at the forefront of driving sustainability and decarbonization. And we're also seeing that in Asia as well. So it's pretty diverse. And it really depends on where you are, region by region.
Good. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Kashima-san from NYK.
Yep.
How's yours and NYK's perspective on who is driving the green transition in shipping?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stian-san. So my name is Kashima, and so I'm responsible for the technical division in NYK, so especially for the green shipping. So I'd like to talk about NYK's present activity. So first, so in the fuel technology transition, so there are a lot of proven technology like LNG dual fuel and methanol DF. So in the case of NYK, we are now trying to challenge to build ammonia tugboat and also so-called AFMGC, ammonia fuel medium-sized gas carrier. So to be built in Japan and to be delivered in year 2024 and year 2026 respectively. So especially I understand the ammonia dual fuel vessel would be the one of the most difficult technology in this industry. Then we are now trying to create we'd like to the first mover in this field. Then we are now trying to taking care and also creating some manuals related to the so-called ammonia safety, especially for the so-called risk assessment, especially in full consideration of the toxic nature of NH3 ammonia. So in order to keep the safe software and also hardware of the ships, to keep that safe for the seafarers on board. So that's why, nowadays, NYK is now putting the first priority to ammonia at this moment. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kashima-san. A fellow ship owner, operator, big one in Japan, Ikeda-san, do you have similar perspectives? Or?
Okay. In the morning session, panelists already discussed about energy transition with globally we need some infrastructure and the supply chain of the bunker. So now I don't intend to repeat again, but environmental issue is most important for the business, not only the shipping sector, but all kind of business. So we have to move forward step by step, even step by step. So Akamatsu-san of Itochu Corporation kindly organized the integrated project for the ammonia fuel vessels with a Capesize bulker. So now we, together with Itochu Corporation and NS United, Nihon Shipyard, and Mitsui E&S as engine manufacturer try to develop the ammonia-fueled vessel. And it's how can I say, the specific project. But if we have to break through some energy transition, it's a kind of the prototype model. So we expect to develop this project and expand them. Yeah.
Thank you, Ikeda-san. And then straight over to Akamatsu-san, representing Itochu, one of the biggest trading houses in Japan. And as you heard by Ikeda-san, with a big focus on ammonia these days, how do you see kind of the pathway to green shipping?
Okay, thank you. And so I think already the policy, the framework is there, and the strategy is set up by IMO, and the demand also is there, and many end users, cargo owners requested the industries to prepare green shipping. And technology, some fuel like LNG, methanol, already there, and ammonia is ongoing. And then some fuel, of course, the next is scalability, how we can produce green fuel at some scale. So this is also issue. Therefore, I think step by step for each kind of fuel, each kind of option, it is ongoing. And then maybe today, this is initiated by Capital Link. So next, we have to invite the shipping and financial industry to join this journey together. Thank you.
Thank you, Akamatsu-san. And then finally, Tsentides, Mr. Tsentides, do you have any views on the present situation when it comes to...
Thank you, Stian. I think I'll answer this from a sort of more high level. I think, you know, what we're experiencing now in the shipping industry is really emotionally driven at the consumer level. You will see consumers are far more, you know, sensitive to sustainable issues, especially in mature economies. This filters through into politics. The politicians want to basically appease the voters. That drives the policy, and then you get these regulations which we're all facing now in the shipping industry. So I think, you know, businesses, shipping companies, we've got to plan within the scope of the regulation to stay profitable. I would say there's probably no surprise that you see like container line companies. They're probably more ahead than the bulkers, maybe. You know, I think they're probably more in the direct line of fire of the consumers. You've got big corporations, they're big demanders of sustainability. You know, we see these net zero pledges soaring. You know, there's 10,000 corporations basically pledging net zero by 2050. So I think, you know, all these things which are driving a little bit what we're seeing in our industry. And then you've got this, I would say, this growing momentum for what I would call the co-ownership of this challenge to reduce the carbon emissions. I think this is, you know, we see this establishment for these green corridors. You've got the industrial giants, you know, they want to scale up demand and supply for these green fuels. And, you know, I think all this has to come, it comes with a price, and, you know, and if the consumer's not willing to pay for it, you know, I think that could be a little bit of a headwind for us and what we try to do. You know, I think this is a little bit the issue. And, you know, I think, you know, what's lagging maybe is this how do we approach this issue of the scalability for these alternative fuels that we are, you know, we are trying to do. I think that's going to be a very big challenge, you know, going forward, basically.
Sure, yeah, the scalability challenge, both I think when it comes to 2030 ambitions, but also 2050 ambitions on two different levels. But those are really challenging targets for our industry to cope with. Talking about regulations, it was mentioned earlier today in the previous panel, kind of the impact on EU ETS, and I think this is one of the hotter topics these days on the regulatory scene. And which was also mentioned in the previous panel that the shipping, in general, the shipping community stresses that like shipping is truly international, and it's quite important to keep or preserving the role as for IMO to be the prime regulatory arena. Several stakeholders have kind of at least voiced some kind of concerns about the introduction of EU ETS. It's a regional measure. Well, it will now be introduced, so there's no doubt about that. But that means we're going for a regional approach rather than a global approach, at least in the first instance. How do you, as representatives of the industry, see the impact of a regulatory scheme such as EU ETS? Maybe you can get the honor of, since you finished the previous round, Mr. Tsentides, maybe you can also kick off.
No, thank you. Look, yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, look, it's not perfect, right? This EU ETS story is not perfect, but I think what we can say is it is definitely spurring developments. I think it's starting a real, we're getting a real conversation going here. When you're putting a price on carbon, an expensive one potentially, I think that's really, focusing everybody, and I think just for that alone, it's probably not a bad thing for our journey on this towards a sort of lower carbon future. I agree with you. I think, the IMO, it's been criticized for perhaps not acting fast enough. It's I think by its very nature, it's a very political organization. So I think you've got all the member states which are going to be basically protecting their own economic interests. And I think that will affect a little bit, how things sort of are being dealt with at that level. Yet I was in London not so long ago on this London Shipping Week, and I have to admit there was you felt this since the last MEPC meeting back in July, which they did, and then they were talking about it in London Shipping Week. You feel there's a real shifting gear, right? There's a noticeable shifting gear what they're trying to do. So I think they've adopted this revised greenhouse strategy. They've got these indicative waypoints now coming up 2030, 2040. Okay, the language is watered down a little bit, but yet I think the intention's there. For me, though, I think personally, if we really are going to take this, this whole decarbonization journey, really accelerate it going forward, I think we do need to sort of address this at a global level. So I think, global carbon levy, and that's certainly what seems to be on the agenda now at IMO level, which I think is a good thing in itself. So I think perhaps that was a little bit coming from from perhaps what the EU has been doing. So yeah, I think Europe, they've set themselves a very, very tall climate goal. That's very ambitious what they're doing. Are they going too far? It's perhaps time will tell. I think it's perhaps they look at it almost like a protectionist measure, perhaps. I could well see the emergence of more compulsory systems coming. Whilst we wait and see what the IMO are doing. So yeah, perhaps the notion of free trade is not really existing anymore. It's a little bit that for me.
Thank you. Ikeda-san from K-Line.
Okay.
Jumping over to you, what's the Japanese perspective on this, or is there?
I'm sorry that this is not Japanese, but this is my private opinion about the ETS, because I'm sure the impact of the EU ETS, but at the same time, I cannot see how can shipping sector receive the return from the collecting money, because no incentive or no return from the EU ETS, we just pay cost. In such sense, if such a regional regulation happened, not only the EU, but for example, another country or another area, shipping company just pay. And even the IMO set up the global mechanism, economical mechanism, but in such case, we need some return or incentive from the collecting money. How we can develop the renewable or new alternative fuel. So the collecting money should be used for the new development. Yeah, just my opinion.
Thank you very much, Ikeda. I think your response kind of highlights the challenge of how to distribute the cost across the value chain towards the end consumer. And I think this is definitely, I'm not, fortunately not a ship owner in that sense, but this is the big challenge for the ship owners and operators these days on kind of how to prepare for something that's coming so soon and how to kind of amend the contracts and the commercial terms. That's definitely probably very high on your agenda these days. With that in mind, Kashima-san from NYK, how do you kind of prepare for EU ETS?
Yes.
You are one of the world's biggest ship owners, and you also charter a lot of tonnage. So this must be a relatively big task.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, it's very big task. Also, so yeah, basically we have to comply with this EU ETS regulation from next year. So at this moment, so after implementing this new rule, we would be noticed that the CO2 becomes the cost. And so we would accelerate the decarbonization activity as soon as possible. Yeah, that's true. But on the contrary, so basically as a company, at NYK, we are supporting Japanese government policy, namely global approach rather than local approach. Then, so we are a little bit very concerned that we would be forced to pay duplicated tax payment in the different region, not only Europe, but also other regions. So additionally, that is our concern, yeah. But basically, we have to comply with such regulation.
Absolutely, yes. I think that's definitely a huge challenge for all of you sitting, or most of you at least, sitting around this table, and plenty of the people out there in the audience as well. Moving a bit away from EU ETS, but kind of linked to the regional approach and the kind of urgency and understanding and engagement on green or on environmental concerns. You all in this panel, you represent international companies with footholds in Asia and Europe and elsewhere. I would like to try to understand from your point of view, how do you experience kind of the urgency and also priority of decarbonization in, I would say, typically Asia versus Europe, if it's possible to generalize in these terms? Maybe we can start with Jeffrey.
Sure. Maybe I'll just say a few things on the EU
Yeah, sure.
ETS as well, because I think this is really also related to that question, right? So if you take a bit of a broader view, because this goes to the development of ammonia and other alternative fuels, the reality is these fuels are much more expensive, right? And at the end of the day, we're all economic animals, and the tendency is to go with what is the most profitable and cheapest option. So in order to encourage the take-up of these new fuels that we're all collectively working on developing, they're 3 to 5x the cost. Ultimately, who's going to pay for that, right? So when you look at the ETS as a market-based measure of what I believe is what the role of government ultimately is, whether it's in the shipping sector for decarbonization or other sectors, it's about serving as a catalyst to facilitate a move towards a direction, whether that's through direct subsidies, whether that's through forms of taxations, but it's all about making the new approach and the new alternative, certainly in the longer term, a more economically viable alternative, right? So if you have a price on carbon, now it does spur companies, whether it's ship owners, operators, the cargo owners, to actually spend money on this technology. Because if we are to provide tonnage with alternative fuels propulsions, that's just going to cost more. And if there's no incentive to pay for that from the charters, from ultimately end consumers like you or me, then it's just not going to happen. And the way the EU ETS is set up, I think it is a regional approach today, but the interesting thing is that they've set it up such that they're only taxing a portion of the emissions for vessels coming in and out of Europe. So that provides an opportunity for other countries to essentially duplicate the same type of scheme, and all of a sudden you have a global approach. So it's not perfect, of course, but it does provide a pathway to provide a more global approach, and we'll have to see how that comes out. And I think that gets into kind of Asia and Europe, certainly different clock speeds. Europe's obviously been at the forefront of the decarbonization movement. And there's also been, I think, a difference in risk-taking appetite in general, Europe versus Asia, and also a focus on different technologies, right? And that's partly driven by the availability of technology, the availability of feedstock. Obviously, Europe being relatively smaller is more focused on electrification, for example, offshore wind, et cetera, and you see more of the low-carbon gases in the Asian region. So I think the one interesting thing that probably doesn't get enough attention is that certainly throughout the COVID era, there was probably less talking between the West and the East. So you've really seen a bit of a divergence in kind of the approaches taken, the mindset taken, and I think what we need to focus on collectively if we are to kind of drive forward this transition, which is, I think we can all agree is for the benefit of all society and all humanities, we need to speak more, both the East and the West.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Akamatsu-san of Itochu, do you agree to Jeffrey's observations, or what's your perspective on the urgency and priority of decarbonization seen from your perspective?
Okay, so I think so this agenda, of course, all of us understood in the past 30 years, we had same discussions, but only discussions. But in the past 3 years, the situation is a bit changing. And especially in Europe, the people start to talk more about global warming issues. And therefore, definitely, this agenda is initiated by European people, it's no doubt. But if you talk about shipping industries, the vessel should be built in Asian shipyards in any cases. So this is not Europe and Asia. So we have to go together, and we have a different role, different scope. Sometimes together, sometimes separate. But I think that is the issue, the matter of all of us. Therefore, I think from now we have to go together.
Very good. Go together. Collaboration is the key. I think that. I think most of us agree to that. Kashima-san, Ikeda-san, any other perspectives from a Japan ship owner point of view?
Yep. In case of the trading to Europe from the Asia, it's very far from, I mean, a long distance. So we need a big bunker facility, vessels bunker tank. So for the ship designer, it's a very, how can I say, big impact for the big capacity. But sorry, another issue. Recently, the Caroline, we will participate Northern Light project of the liquefied CO2 carrier in the Norwegian project. And recently, our client or car owner very interested in such a project, what's going on in Norway. And also the Caroline, at the same time, try to develop the LCO2 carrier from the Maizuru to Tomakomai, Hokkaido, under the Nedo-san support. So as I said, energy transition, it takes time for globally, but it's a kind of the one solution for the decarbonization, not decarbonization, but kind of the saving the carbon emission. It's I think we have a chance to transport CO2 itself as a liquefied. So the Northern Light project is a very remarkable project for the global. So we hope to, how can I say, expand such kind of the project.
Yeah, and I think you're touching very well upon my next question here, which is actually...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a good segue to the next next question, which actually we know that, of course, there is lots of challenges with the transition to green shipping or to the general energy transition in the world. But that means that there will also be business opportunities, and one of those you just pointed out with carriage of CO2. That's one good example of how kind of the decarbonization challenge also becomes a business opportunity. Another aspect is, of course, that to have sufficient amounts of low carbon or zero carbon fuel, we need to invest vast amounts into renewable energy, offshore wind as one example. And like Kashima-san, where do you see kind of the opportunity space when it comes to the decarbonization challenge and the green transition?
Yes, yeah, frankly, I'm very positive about the decarbonization activity for the future. So especially there are a lot of business opportunity in this industry. So especially as previously said, collaboration is very important, and also for NYK, we are now participating in the Maersk McKinsey Center in Europe, and also we became the member of the GCMD in Singapore. So this kind of cooperation activity is very much important for the not only NYK but also other parties concerned to accelerate the decarbonization activities in this industry. So from such viewpoint, yeah, we are like to talk as much as possible for the other parties concerned who has some business chance. So even not only for NYK but also the industry. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Kashima-san. Trifon, from your point of view, where do you kind of see the business opportunities from your perspective and from your company's kind of role in the industry?
Let me answer this from a perspective as, let's say, we're facilitators of business. Look, our Ifchor Galbraiths, our core business is broking, right? But we find ourselves increasingly, I would say, taking on the role as advisors. Our aim is to ensure that our clients, can always remain competitive. What I would call in this sort of phase of adaptation, really, we're going through this sort of period of adaptation. Let's say this energy transition, right? Whilst we go to this sort of lower carbon and hopefully a zero carbon future. So I think the business opportunities, I would say, for the shipping companies, it's all about adapting, right? It's we feel there's a very good investment case to sort of actually be upgrading the existing fleet. Together with our partners, Clear Blue Markets, we're helping private owners, for example. They're doing retrofit programs for energy-saving devices. So it's about making what the clients have already in their hands, and then even we can take that to a carbon registry and we can generate carbon finance. So I think it's all about the owners getting ahead of the curve. They realize the carbon metrics are going to get more and more stringent going forward. So it's a way of rewarding that overachievement from today. So I think it's you're getting the saving, and you're getting that incentive to do that as well. That's a little bit on that. And then, Yeah, I mean, we have our sale and purchase teams. They're actively advising clients, considering placing new building orders, these dual fuel-ready options. I guess it's a way for the owners to sort of future-proof themselves a little bit. It typically could probably take anything between 2 to 3 years before by ordering a ship, taking delivery, add on another 5 years for your first special survey dry docking. And it's a way for them to sort of, let's say, make an investment an investment decision on the market today, but you're sort of almost postponing that fuel economics question for a later moment. So I think, yeah, it's all about how can we guide our clients to make reasonable investments without ending up with some stranded asset down the line. I think that's a little bit from our perspective.
Very good. Since we're talking about opportunities, business opportunities here, I guess there's all business people in this room. I think it will be interesting to get both Akamatsu-san's and also Jeffrey's perspective on what do you see as kind of your primary opportunity space in this green transition. Maybe first Akamatsu-san and then Jeffrey, and then I think we're basically out of time after that. So Akamatsu-san first.
Okay, thank you. So as Ikeda-san explained, that we Itochu are now focusing on ammonia fuel vessel with supply chain, and because we believe that this is the area which we can contribute to the market. Of course, if you talk about the biofuel or methanol, this is handled by our colleagues, another department, because this is more fuel side. But if you talk about ammonia, we have to take care all aspects, not only shipbuilding to build a vessel, with ammonia engine, but also shipping to own and operate and for the end user, but also the bunkering to supply fuel. And what kind of fuel? Today, ammonia is not fuel. It's just a chemical product for some industries, such as fertilizer. And no one considers ammonia as a fuel. And also, we have to consider like a life cycle assessment. So today, we have only gray ammonia. But the industries need something clean ammonia, but no definition. What is clean? So we have to focus how to produce ammonia as a clean fuel, and how to set up price mechanism for each kind of clean fuel. Because if we talk about renewable, energy-based green ammonia and natural gas-based blue ammonia with CCS, totally different approach. So price mechanism should be totally different. So as a chemical itself, it's same, NH3. But anything other than NH3, totally different. That's why we have to discuss with the various parties how to set up a supply chain and for fuel, and how to connect to the shipping industries, including cargos, because we have to supply the fuel, clean fuel, which is also acceptable by shippers. But shippers, there is no criteria. They don't know what should be a clean fuel. If we talk to IMO, they don't know. And energy industries, they don't know. Therefore, if we talk about the life cycle assessment, people talk life cycle, but no one knows what does it mean. There is no international criteria. There is no unified concept at all. And now, industries, they just started to talk about the CCS. But each country, they don't have any local rule. What is the CCS? Then how we can make a unified international rule if no country have their own rules? Therefore, if we talk about the blue fuel based on CCS, no one knows what is it. So I think we have to integrate everything, so step by step. And so we would like to invite all of industry parties, not only shipping industries, shipbuilding, technology people, fuel people, or authorities, or sometimes academic, sometimes port authorities if it is a safety issue, or if it is a certificate, then we have to invite some auditors. Therefore, we have to consider full supply chain for both fuel, shipping, and then end user, because the shipping is to carry commodity. Then end user intend to make something based on this products. Then they intend to sell such products. So like iron ore, steel, and car. Therefore, this is also the part of supply chain for these commodities. Therefore, it's very challenging how we should integrate together. So we need all parties participant, and also on the financing industries. So that is a challenge, but that is a long journey. And our idea is to go together. That's all.
Very good. And then, sorry for not giving you so much time for your, thank you very much, Akamatsu-san. Then, Jeffrey, if you can try to summarize your opportunity space in 1 minute.
I'll keep it very simple. Red light's on. But for us, it's pretty straightforward. So we focus on different parts of the value chain. On the upstream side, it is supporting the production of renewable electricity that's really providing CSOVs, CTVs, that are crucial for the commissioning and the O&M over the life of the wind farms. So that's what we do. And those vessels themselves are using battery electric hybrid technology with a pathway to increase the use of those technologies. Methanol is an option in the future as well. And then on the transport of low carbon fuels like ammonia, like LNG, we have a fleet of vessels that transport both ammonia today. Obviously, most of that is pretty much all fertilizer, but in the future that hopefully will be blue and green ammonia, as well as LNG. We'll continue to expand that as the market develops for those low carbon gases.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, fellow panelists. It's a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes? Question? Okay, question from audience. Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me well, because we're supposed to talk about carriers. It's very important we heard. Sorry? It's very important we heard about collaboration today. So we agree with this approach. Starbuck is a member to the Green Corridor, together with BHP, Rio Tinto, and Oldendorf. So we believe and support ammonia as a favorable option for net zero carbon emissions. We are very confident about the possibility of designing the Japanese shipyards and NSY designing the next generation ammonia fuel vessel. We have doubt on some other factors. Supply chain, it will eventually play out. Why? Because you can scale up ammonia. So we are very strong supporters of that, and that's why we developed the operational protocol for Australia to China, together with our partners. I have 3 questions which probably have to be answered very quickly. You're dealing with MAN, BMW. We are monitoring developments with MAN. We just finished testing of 1 cylinder. We know what is, Akamatsu-san is smiling. We know that they have tested 1 cylinder. The question is, number 1 question, what do you think is a realistic timing of getting MAN engine fully tested before it goes onto the Newcastlemax? This goes hand in hand with the next point, which is we are still trying to figure out how will crews deal with safety, and even before that, the safety protocol that has to be developed and adopted by authorities, which we're still looking at the whole scene. And finally, regulation for trading, bunkering. And there's one final question. You can answer whatever you want out of this. We are a little bit concerned about social issues. So big ships, we believe, will be applicable for ammonia, but they will be trading mostly in remote areas, at least at the beginning, until the technology is 10 years into operation. While methanol, which has many other issues, mainly because of the scalability of real e-methanol supply, is more easily adaptable to regional trades, populated trades. We don't go further who has ordered. But these are the 2 main changes. But I think the most important one is real expectation of delivery of engine. MAN is competing with WinGT, and real protocol of getting the engine on your vessel with a standard to operate. It's a very long question. So
what are the 3 questions? So that
whatever wants to be. I think engine and delivery of the vessel is probably key. We have 40 Cape and Newcastlemaxes. We care a lot about your answer. Thank you.
Okay, and So first, of course, MAN. So you have access to the MAN, so maybe you can see. But recently they made a webinar, and what we can say that engine test is still ongoing. And so at this stage, they can say this is no negative surprise. So means it's going well. And we can say N2O, that is the one of our concern. Because even if we save the CO2, if we have N2O, then no meaning. But we confirm that according to their test, the N2O emission is very limited. So that is good news. That's why we assume, so technically speaking, engine can be done. That's why we go further. So that is our current positions. Delivery time, of course, very difficult to say because one cylinder test is still ongoing, and then thereafter full cylinder test. Okay, and officially speaking, the MAN announced in the past to deliver the first engine by the end of 2024. But of course, that was the original plan. Then should be delayed, and so we cannot say too much about it. But but in any case, our original idea was the delivery of the first vessel is early 2026. It's very difficult to keep it because of the delay of engine test. But then after we have a more official result from engine test, then we intend to review what will be exact delivery for first vessel. So that is our current status. And safety issue maybe.
Okay. Okay. Safety issue. For the at the viewpoint of the shipbuilding, we of course we segregate the space itself like bulkhead or double tube or with ammonia supply. But in general, the ammonia is hard to burn, combustion itself, because its property. So when the vessel approaching the port or any, how can I say, Singapore, like a Singapore Strait, at that time the vessel itself switched to conventional oil, so that we never use the ammonia itself. Only the ocean navigation. And also you pointed out the social impact. But actually only bunkering, ammonia bunkering, have some possibility to leak to atmosphere. But it's very difficult to say. It's a very small quantity, even if the leakage happens, because we have an emergency shutdown system. Also, we will take a showering curtain for protecting the to expose to the atmosphere. So we have some safety measure to minimize the risk. So of course, finally the port authority or any flag or something to confirm the countermeasure or safety issue. But I believe that we can manage such a ammonia leakage problem or toxic, because ammonia is kind of smelling, so the human being can acknowledge if the only small leakage happened. Human can acknowledge, oh, it's ammonia leaking. So maybe the human being the faster than a detector. I think this is my answer.
Okay. And also for bunkering, so because we are working for the bunkering global network, so the pilot project in Singapore, and then next is Spain. And then actually this week we announced Suez Canal and some other area. And our idea is, as Ikeda-san pointed out, the social is the issue against the leakage. We cannot take a responsibility for social issues. which should be handled by social, like authorities or government at the local area. But our approach is to carry out bunkering at anchorage, like many kilometers from offshore. Then we can focus on the safety for crews. If maybe in the future, we may have to make a bunkering in terminal. Then I think it should be issued. But our demonstration is to carry out offshore side. So that's the idea.
Can I just add, it also helps to use a class society that has long experience in developing safety guidelines for alternatives.
I'm sorry.
Okay, then I think a little bit over time, but again, a very interesting and engaging discussion. Thank you very much, fellow panelists.